Hey friends, my name is Nee Abrahams and I'm the director of the first year experience at Butler University in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a part of the FYE and Orientation Collaborative. And I am so thrilled to be a CSLC workshop presenter today. And just to share with you a little bit about something that I'm really passionate about. And if you get the opportunity, would love for you to stay after. I'll be doing a live Q&A after this particular workshop. So please hang on. Would love to chat with you, talk with you, share a little bit more about my story and how God can use you to impact the students around you. So I want to share a little bit more about something I'm particularly passionate about, and that is what we call biggest fan leadership. But before I get to that, I want to share with you a little story. So obviously this is pre-recorded, so you may not get a chance to see this, but how many of you have siblings? Okay, I have a sibling who is 2 years younger than me. He's my little brother. I love him to death. And as with every sibling, they like to play pranks on you sometimes. So I'm 30 years old, so you may or may not know this particular superhero, but I grew up watching this particular superhero called Static Shock, okay? Now, Static Shock was probably one of the coolest dudes literally ever. He was this cool black dude. He had locks, like he was awesome. He had electricity and he could do all sorts of crazy things. My favorite superhero growing up. And I'll never forget one day after watching Static Shock with my brother, I had to be like 8 or 9. I'll never forget. Okay, fine. I'll admit it. It was more like 10. I'll never forget. I was messing around with my brother. We're on the couch in the basement, and all of a sudden, like, I shock him. Now, granted, I barely knew anything about, Static Shock and anything like that. But I remember shocking him, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And then I remember I did it again, and It was incredible. I'll never forget that feeling because in a moment, all of a sudden I'm like, I have a power. I have a gift. Now, I've always wanted superpowers, and here I am. I have the superpower of electricity, and I was thrilled out of my mind. So, of course, I did what all superheroes do. They train. So I ran around. I was trying to do as much as I could. And every single time I would shock my brother, he would be like, ow, and he would say how much he was shocked. And in my head, I was like, this is it. Like, I've made it. Like, I've got to dedicate my life to being a superhero. It was everything I ever wanted. Well, you probably know where this story's going. Every time I shocked my brother, the first time it shocked him, but every time after that, he was just faking. And needless to say, my world was shattered. I, for whatever reason, had this absolute desire to one day wake up at like 12 or 13 or 16 or really any birthday milestone and think that I would wake up one day and I would have superpowers. And I don't know, maybe you're in the room and you've done that too, where you woke up at 16 and maybe just like picked up your bed just to see, if you had super strength, or, maybe you jumped off your bed maybe to see if you could fly. Maybe I'm the only one. If so, that's fine. I'll take it. But I think all of us at some point in time have thought to ourselves, like, maybe there's something inside of me that I don't really know that could be of great value to other people. And it doesn't take a genius to kind of figure out where I'm going with this. I think this is really true of our lives as well, not just in the superpower realm, but in every other realm as well. That even though we don't have superpowers, there is wonder waiting inside of each and every one of us. We have incredible gifts and talents and passions and abilities inside of each of us. It just sometimes takes someone pulling that out. It takes someone helping unearth that potential. I love what Ephesians 2:10 says. I'm going to read it right now. And I love this verse because I think it really encapsulates what I'm trying to communicate here. It says, and this is coming from the ESV version, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, in which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. There's another version I'm going to read from my iPad here. I love this version even more. It says, for we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good works he planned for us long ago. Now, I've been married for about 4 years, and my wife loves museums. I don't know if you're watching and you love museums too. I'm sorry, I just don't get you. I do not understand museums. I try as hard as I can. Every new city we go to, we always have to find a museum. So I know my place in the museum. It's really just to hold her purse. We walk, she enjoys it. Maybe she tears up a little bit and I just kind of fake like I know what I'm doing. So I'll never forget, we were in New York and we're at the Met and we're in this incredible world-renowned museum, and she's walking around. You can tell she's really like deeply connected to it, and I'm just kind of like, a dog could have painted that. I have no idea, but I'll never forget, I came up against this one particular painting and I just remember being mesmerized by it. And I remember asking the tour guide, like, hey, what's going on with this painting? And they're kind of telling us about it. And to me, it was kind of abstract. It didn't really look like it made sense. But when the tour guide started describing the details of the painting, it became very clear that this was not done by accident, that every stroke, every design was on purpose. Even though it didn't look like that on surface, if you looked detailed and looked even further, you could see that everything was done on purpose. And I have to imagine in the same way, like, that's how God has created and viewed us, that we are literally God's masterpiece. That he's created each and every one of us on purpose and for a purpose. So that leaves us to question, why isn't other people, or why are there people in our lives that aren't living up to that purpose? Because we all know that person, that student. Maybe it's the person in your class, maybe it's a roommate, maybe it's someone that you've known at your campus for a while, that for whatever reason, you see all the potential in the world and they don't take advantage of it. Or maybe they have all the talent in the world, but they're wasting it. Or maybe there's something in them, but they're too afraid. The person who has natural leadership ability, but doesn't see it. As student leaders, it's really easy for the extroverted people, with a lot of people in the room, to get noticed, to be seen. But there's a whole group of people that for whatever reason, maybe that there's something inside of them, but it hasn't really been unearthed. So we know that God created us on purpose and for a purpose. We know that each and every one of us are God's masterpiece, that there's talents, gifts, and abilities inside each and every one of us to do the good work that He called us to do. We also know that not everybody's living in that purpose. So now the question, which brings us to kind of the meat of what we're going to talk about today, is how? Like, how in the world do we help people draw out that potential inside of them? Like, what do we need to do? Because as student leaders, the chances are there's probably someone who did that for you. I know for me, there's a guy named Brett. I went to Missouri State University, and I remember as a freshman, Brett was a senior. He was one of the first people I ever met on campus, was a part of a campus ministry I was a part of. And to this day, even a decade plus later, Brett and I are still getting together and connecting. Brett did for me what no one else had done up until that point. There are people who were great in my life, but Brett really helped. He took his personal mission to unearth that potential, to unearth the leadership inside of me. And I'm guessing that there's probably somebody that you know, maybe even a student, maybe an upperclassman, maybe a freshman or sophomore that did that for you. Or maybe it was a teacher or a pastor or a mentor or maybe a coach, but somebody noticed something in you and decided that that you were worth pursuing, that you were worth being intentional for. And so as student leaders, the question now is you're in a leadership role, how in the world do you do that for somebody else? So this is where the concept of biggest fan leadership came to play. So I am a church planter. I've been a church planter for the past 5 or 6 years, and I'm a staff pastor at a local church, at the church that I helped plant. And Biggest Fan Leadership was a model that we created at Parkside Church here in Indianapolis as a way to really help our congregation and the people that serve in our congregation, to help them figure out what's the model and template for us to lead in a way that makes sense, that doesn't require a PhD in leadership. It doesn't require you to be a pastor, that anyone can lead. And Biggest Fan Leadership is that very thing. And essentially, Biggest Fan Leadership is this. We want to encourage people, we want to celebrate people, and we want to be their biggest fan. We want to walk alongside people, call things out in them, celebrate them, invite them into our lives and into our space. And that's essentially what Biggest Fan Leadership is. It's something that our church developed. It's how we do leadership. And I think that the principles of Biggest Fan Leadership that we help to develop can be the very thing that can help you unearth the incredible gifts and talents and abilities in the people around you. And here's why this is important. And this ties back to the very theme of so that. We become biggest fan leaders so that we can begin to unearth the God-given potential inside of each and every person. That's why we do this. That's why your job matters. Because I bet you right now, you're probably thinking of a person or two that you'd say, you know what? Yeah, there's someone on my mind that I know that for whatever reason they're not connecting, but I want to take a vested interest in their life and help unearth that potential inside of them. So really briefly, I want to give 3 particular ways that we can do that. And I'm going to click on my timer here because I want to make sure I am on time. So I'm going to do that right now. And we have 9 minutes left. So in that, here are a few things I want you to consider. 3 ways, 3 asks of a biggest fan leader. The first is this. Cultivate your influence. Now, what do I mean by cultivate your influence? I mean that it's first and foremost, before you can do anything, it's important for you to know who you are. A couple years ago, I went on a journey that I called a PhD in me, essentially meaning like I took time, whether it's the Enneagram, whether there's other personality assessments, trying to understand through the Strengths Quest who I am and how that fits into how I can lead others. And so when you begin to cultivate your influence, it starts with learning who you are. When you learn who you are, you learn your giftings, you learn your skill sets. That's going to better equip you to better serve others. Understanding that leading yourself is one of the most important things that you can do. When we talk about leading others so often, and maybe you know of someone who talks about leading others but doesn't really know how to lead themselves. And so they'll communicate one thing, but their lifestyle says something completely different. So if you want to lead others, it first begins with leading yourself. What are the habits and the disciplines that you have in your life? What are the things that you are digesting that is empowering and encouraging you to grow in your leadership? What are the ways and who are the people, who are the mentors in your life that are giving space for you to grow and learn and to be a part of that? So when I talk about cultivating your influence is the very first thing that a biggest fan leader does. That's what I'm talking about. How do we cultivate the leadership inside of us? How do we invite other people into our lives to challenge us, to encourage us, and to help grow our leadership capacity and potential? The third is the third part of this cultivating influence, and I think this is probably the most important thing, is that insecure leaders will decimate the people around them. I don't know if you've ever been around an insecure leader, but when you're insecure, it really does change everything. So when we talk about cultivating your influence, we're talking about wanting to be a secure leader, a leader who knows who they are and knows how they lead and how that they can influence and impact others. The second ask of a biggest fan leader, I'm going to say the biggest fan student leader, which I'm including you in, is your goal is to discover people's potential. Now, how do we discover people's potential? I think this is a big part of this process. It's simply this. Is you want to be a journalist in search of a story. If you think about journalists, one of the best things that they're known for is making question asking and art. Oftentimes when we have conversations with people, we have a tendency to make conversation about us, but what if when you went into interactions and engagements with people, you thought to engage them in a way that you're going to unearth the story inside of them? What questions are you asking? How are you listening? How are you engaging yourself in conversation to begin to unearth the story inside of people? So I like to call this is actually coming from a book. It's called The Journalist Mindset. Have a journalist mindset, because part of discovering and unearthing people's potential starts with understanding and knowing their story. And when you understand and know their story, it absolutely changes everything. It gives you context for who they are, why they are the way they are, and how you can walk alongside of them. So discovering people's potential starts with making question asking and art. Learning their story, understanding their story, and then in turn sharing more of your story, which again goes back to cultivating your influence, because when you know who you are, when you know your story, when you begin to ask other people, engage with people and unearth the story inside of them, you'll be able to share part of your story too. And that connection point is so crucial to where you want to go and who you want to be. Third and foremost is help them soar. And I know that this is really basic in nature, but I think this is probably the most important, because oftentimes as leaders, it's really easy to develop leaders and then not do anything with it. So what does that look like? Is give people space to fail. That may mean that even though you could probably do it yourself and it would be better, if someone could do it, someone told me this once, if there's somebody else who can do what you do at 70%, give them the opportunity to do it. Now that may mean that they fail, that's okay. Because there have been times where you have failed, but someone's giving you the opportunity to fail, and that's giving you an opportunity to grow. And I know as student leaders, it's really easy to be protective over the things that maybe we've built, but it's so important that if you are going to lead, if you are going to help unearth people's potential, if you want to be a biggest fan leader, that means giving them space to fail. Again, that may mean that you're going to have to give up something you love, and that's okay, because you're going to walk alongside of them and give them space. And if they do fail, which you hope they won't, that you can walk alongside of them and help them along the way. The second part under helping them fail is challenge them healthily, right? I think there's an importance and a significance in challenging the people around you and challenging the students around you and encouraging them, but also calling things out in them, right? As biggest fan leaders, think about the biggest fans in your life. Not only are they cheering you on, but they're also encouraging you and challenging you to grow and to be better. And so we want to be really intentional here, not to do that out of pride or out of selfish ambition, but we want to challenge them healthily. And last but not least, we want to over-encourage. I can guarantee you there'll never be a time where someone leaves an interaction where you over-encourage someone where they go, man, that person sucks. He encouraged me, she encouraged me so much. I feel better about myself, right? Like nobody does that, right? So my challenge to you is to over-encourage. That is the wind beneath people's wings to soar. So when we talk about biggest fan leadership, so 3 simple asks. First and foremost, cultivate your influence. Second, discover people's potentials through the journalist mindset. And third and finally, help them soar. Give them space to fail, challenge them healthily, and then over-encourage them. Even if you're not someone who's an encourager, that's okay. Encourage. And here's what's going to happen when you do. I know we just have a couple minutes left, but here's what's going to happen when you do these things. I've seen this happen in my life. We've seen this model transform our church and how people lead. But when this happens, when you help discover people's potential, when you help them soar, when you cultivate their influence, things like this are going to happen. People are going to be built. You're going to see more student leaders unearthing the giftings inside of them. your definition of success is going to begin to change, because then you're going to begin to realize that success isn't measured in perfection. Success is measured in development of people. And that is a game changer, because when people are developed, that is your metric for success, because then it's not about you, it's about sustainability and in the long term. And then finally, you'll develop healthier teams. I truly believe that healthy things grow. And so Biggest Fan Leadership gives you an opportunity to grow your team from the inside out in a way that's healthy, in a way that's manageable, in a way that's replicable outside of you, so that the things that you're creating doesn't just stay within your class, but for 10, 15, 20 years continues to grow. But it all starts with developing leaders. I know this was really simple, but I really hope that this was impactful, or at least encouraged you. Maybe some of you are doing this already, and that's great. For others of you, maybe this is a start. But again, I can't encourage you enough. Be someone's biggest fan. Write them a note, encourage them. Now, you know what? That's gonna be my challenge to you. We do this thing at our churches. We call it Biggest Fan Notes. Before you leave today, maybe it's a card, maybe it's a note card, maybe it's an email, maybe it's a text. Think of one person that you can encourage today. Let them know that you're cheering them on, that you're encouraging them, and you're excited for them. I promise you, if you can do that, you'll make someone's day. So again, I'm gonna say it one more time. What are the 3 asks of a Biggest Fan student leader, which now includes you? First and foremost, cultivate your influence. Cultivate your influence. Second, discover people's potential. And third and finally, help them soar. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm excited to connect with you about more on this topic after this particular session with our live Q&A. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, friends.